Hello YouTube, RJ Carter here, and for this one, kind of want to talk about the whackness of life, the the reality of it all, and just how far we have come, and how much farther we have to go, or we get to go, I should say. But there was a quote or a comment on a website. And this is like a satire, not a satire, but this is a funny kind of website. It's not really taking itself too serious, but I remember a long time ago there was a quote, or somebody wrote a comment and said, "This can't be life," and it was just that, no peer, no nothing. And then at first it's funny, you're like, yeah, I get it, And then I actually saw the exact same thing years later, right? Because the first time I saw it was years ago, and I saw it again recently, and this time. It was the first time it was funny, like, oh man, that's hilarious kind of thing, where you laugh internally or what have you. But you see it now, it's a little bit more sad. It's a lot more sad, actually, because, you start to realize that, because I remember the days when, Twitter first kind of started, Instagram first kind of started, and, especially, or when they became popular, I remember it's just, I was following people, and there's always a hope. Like, when you go in the morning and you wake up and you check your Instagram, there's always this hope that one day you're going to become rich. One day you're going to, be able to hang out with your favorite celebrities, be able to get that girl. There's always some type of, hope, some type of, it's worth it at the end. But in reality, all you're really doing is waking up and going to your occupation or whatever, going to your day job. But when you're on your phone, you get to follow your favorite celebrities. There's news every day. There's entertainment every day. Whatever happened the night before. It's jokes are being made. So there's this hope, all right? But as the years go on, and the reality of it is you're still going to an occupation. You know what I'm saying? So you're not rich yet. You don't have that girl. You don't have that car. You haven't went on that vacation destination, and all these things. And so it's at first and it kind of relates back to the quote, oh, this can't be life, because then you realize wait a minute, I think I'm just going on my phone and scrolling through, getting some false stimulus, and then I'm going to work. And then you realize that this happens years later. You're like, oh wow, this is this is existence. This is the reality. And you see it too. People are enslaved, and you don't want to downgrade it too much, because somebody else always has the worst off. But from a general perspective, the whole concept of waking up and going to the bathroom and having these dreams being fulfilled or unfulfilled, and all these aspirations or what have you. And it actually came to my consciousness that okay, yeah, you can have the the plane flights and the trips to this destination and the cool pictures of the beach and all of these things, but you got to work towards it. You got to struggle towards it. You got to have suffering towards it. Really, that's what kind of boils down to, the pain of the suffering or what have you. But it is what it is. And kind of switch subjects here. There's another concept that has actually been coming up, and it relates to sexuality. It relates to the Illuminati, even pornography, because you're starting to really realize that a lot of these entertainment channels nowadays are overly sexualized, or they're sexualized in a subliminal sense. I was watching an episode of VH1 Hip Hop Squares for whatever reason, and I could count maybe 4 or 5. The whole entire episode really was sexual references and things of that nature. Whereas it should have been, this is a hip hop show. It should have been and you could tell, it's part comedy, part hip hop, overall entertainment, but it's way too over sexualized. There is no, talking of history. There is no, you have different characters too that you wouldn't normally see together. And that's kind of a point too. I kind of wish the show, because it's very interesting. The whole concept is interesting once you actually sit down and kind of analyze what celebrities are actually on there and their interactions that they have. It easily could be a 1 hour show, but to kind of bring it back, I think they had it in old school, but to kind of get back to the point of the topic, it's very overly sexualized. Like that's just the one episode I saw, but I'm pretty sure that theme kind of continues on, where even the questions are sexualized, and kind of getting away from that episode or that show. There's other things too that reference the people's need to escape to pornography. And I don't want to mention like social media because that's a little bit of an obvious one, but there's a lot of subliminal things as well. I know probably a good reference. I can't really think of it now. Actually, there is one where there's a show on Complex. It's called they have a daily vlog. Everybody has a daily vlog nowadays, but they have a daily vlog show, and they have a point of a segment where they'll have a beat, or they're showcasing some type of fashion or shoes, and they'll have the beat come in, and they'll have all these camera angles and slow motion and all these things, and the beat comes in, and generally speaking, the beat comes in, it's a regular beat, good, and then I was watching one episode, and I don't watch these things frequently, but it was one episode they literally had like a girl moaning like out of nowhere, like in the beginning, and this is YouTube, so you could at first, if you heard that like on TV, you're like, did I just hear okay, whatever, right? That's just like, that wasn't really there. But now you have rewind, it's like, wait a minute, did I just hear what I think I heard? And you rewind, it's like, wow, I really did just think I heard that, like, and I did hear that, and they did have it in there. And it's kind of sad because on TV, it's like, oh wow, that's sad. But on YouTube, that's even more sadder and pathetic, and because you could rewind it, so there is no question, right? It's in there, and you got to ask the question, like, who's doing this? Who's curating this? What message did this come from to have this, this noise, this sexual explicit noise be in there? And you put it in there, and you rewind it, and it's like, wow, and you kind of can see the general the panscape of the American society, and I would argue this is like what the Illuminati would be about, is the concept of having men or women over sexualized to the point where they're more more inclined to go on these pornography sites or what have you, and you see it in the worshiping of women on social media, but nowadays the trend is that women are actually getting pregnant now. Like, people like of like completely forgot the fact that the women of today are the same women of 100, 200, 3 years ago, like 200, 300 years ago. Like, they're just women, and they get pregnant and they have kids, and people, on the over-sexualization aspect of it, have deluded themselves in their mind or what have you, which is kind of, easy to do when you have all these stimulus, but the reality always hits you at the end of the day. But just relating back to the topic is just, it's just, you kind of can see the agenda of the quote-unquote elite. And I actually want to reference Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yu-Gi-Oh is a game very popularized in the early 2000s, and that was kind of like the height of the game, like from early 2000, I want to say 2001, 2004 or 5, and a lot of people, died off from it, but the game in and of itself is very legendary. It's a lot of kids, a lot of kids in the early 2000s, they knew of the game. Like, you knew about the game, you collected the cards, you had the cards, you traded them, you played with them, and what have you. So, a very popularized game. And not too long ago, maybe, I want to say 2010, I don't know what the exact year is, but they had a deck. They had a pretty cool looking card on it, but when you read the description of the card, it's so overly complex, and even like hardcore players would say this is one of the hardest cards to summon. And it's interesting how you look at the game, because for kids, it's an interesting time too, because the kids that grew up on that game in the early 2000s, by the time it's 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever, they're old enough to where they have gotten occupations on a certain level. And when you get an occupation, you get money in the bank, you get your bills paid, and you get a little bit of leisure time to where you want to spend it on games, and you need to spend it to keep the economy going on a certain level on games or whatever. But and they had the card, and it was just so overly complex. And it was just kind of interesting looking back at it in hindsight, to where, maybe that was their little moan in the soundtrack, their little references of sexuality three times, because you almost kind of see that a lot of these, I wouldn't call it games, but a lot of these medias are making things complex, and they're giving you subliminal message to escape to pornography or alcohol or sex or relationships, and just be overstimulated, overstimulated, to where it breaks you down mentally, spiritually, psychologically, mentally, from a health standpoint. Just this worshiping of women, and it might be a stretch to kind of connect the two, but I'm starting to realize back in the day, like, if they had that card, if they had that, if they had that meta be a little bit easier, and that adds so many complications to it, then more people would have kind of dived back into it at that current meta in time, because a lot of the kids in the early 2000s, are especially when you're if you grew up on the kid and you were poor and you didn't have the funds to buy all the decks and sets. When you're older, you actually have money, you actually have leisure time. You could justify purchasing whatever place that you can. It's a little skewed. It's weird that they would set it up to where to make the game a little bit more complex than what it needs to be. And kind of rambling on this topic, but the point of it is, just to pay attention to the over-sexualization and the message, the subliminal ones that, a lot of these companies, a lot of these entertainment media is thrown, because you could argue that the agenda of the elites is to have people simply, jaying off, and there's plenty more references, and it's it might be another, interesting trait, interesting realm to go to see what kind of references they've thrown. But as far as right now, as far as like the VH1 shows, a lot of it is essentially over sexualizations, to where the end result is just a girl being pregnant before her time, essentially. And if you want to think even deeper into it, you got the like teen mom shows and what have you, but more or less the adult shows are what reference these too. And of course, we don't want to really reference the obvious ones of music videos and what have you, but the more of the subliminal ones, the more of the shows that, and the concepts that they should be more intellectual, they should be more, they should target more stimulus than middle school kind of references and jokes, because grown men in their 30s and 40s to be, and women to be, always be, overly sexualized about this, because normal people don't, in the 40s and 50s, they talked about sophisticated concepts and things and items and what have you, but it is what it is. RJ Carter here. Till next time, peace.